procedures. I mean, I knew how these things operate. And getting into this, I always had the sense that the court was buying Howard's rep, and that I had a huge obstacle to overcome before he would even come close to weighing what I had to say the same way that he did Howard's. And honestly, I didn't help myself, because at the start of the case, I didn't know the facts as well as I should have. And that is just kind of the way I've learned to do things over the years. And let me explain that. At the start of a lawsuit, a lot of people say, well, these are the facts, and this happened, and that person did this to somebody else, and they said that. And what I've learned over 40 years is that as the case develops and you start to take depositions and you start to compare depositions and you start to compare them against the written evidence, it turns out that the facts are very fluid during discovery. And so I'm not one to commit myself early to a specific set of facts. I know generally what happens. I know in some parts specifically what happens, but I'm not going to go in there and try to claim that I know every single fact perfectly and this is the way it is. And that's the way Hill Ward came in with with Howard Hunter and David Hughes particularly, where they would come in and tell the court, relying on their reputation, that this is just the way it is, Judge. And these I can barely call them lawyers from Ponte Vedra Beach, which is not true. We're actually, our firm's in Jacksonville and Palm Beach County. But that's the way they portrayed us. And I think that the court, I think they had a lot of gravitas and we had none. And so through the course of the case, there were a lot of things that happened where I think in another circumstance, for instance, if I'd have been in my home court, to the extent I ever have a home court in this country, the way I've tried cases everywhere, but if I'd been someplace where people already knew me, I think we would have gotten sanctions about 7 times. I counted all. and we did it. We only got.
But Greg, it's a little difficult to complain about lack of home court advantage when the jury delivered a $261 million verdict, and even after remitter in the current post-trial motions, you're still north of $213 million. So I think you played on the I think you played an away game very well, and so. One of the things that I thought was pretty amazing about the orders that the judge issued this morning was how aligned he was with the jury's findings. I think he really endorsed the hard work that they did, and I know that we've got juror number 1 in the audience. We may have others. I think he really gave them full faith and credit.
I agree 100%. And, a lot of people don't know this, but I never met Paul, the juror number 1. I didn't know who juror number 1 was, other than the guy on the other side of that wood bench. Until about, Paul will tell you, about 2 weeks ago. Max deliberately did not want to get too close, and he's just a wonderful man, and I got to get to know him, and I can't say enough good things about him and the rest of our jurors. I think, again, this was a process for the judge. I think that it took the court some time, as it should, to feel out who the jurors were they paying attention, did they know what was up, and were they going to deliver a verdict that wasn't just off the cuff for one side or the other. And as the trial progressed and Paul asked more and more questions, and his fellow jurors and alternates who thought they were on the jury as well. I felt so bad for them when they announced it.
Yeah.
It looked like they were going to cry.
Yeah.
They found they weren't going to be on the jury. It's interesting though. I think that kind of, I think that really had an effect on the jurors that were there, because I knew of those 12 how everybody, well, maybe with one exception, but everybody really cared about this case. Everybody had obviously very strong opinions about this. And then selected at the end out of those 12 to be the 6th. And you have to ask Paul, those jurors that were actually in there. But I think that really reinforced a lot of the understanding of how important they were. That was my impression. So anyway, through the course of the case, I think it took a while for Judge Carroll to warm up to me. I don't think he's ever warmed up to me. I'm definitely not his kind of guy for various, and I don't know the reasons, but I'm just not. And I accept that, because, I mean, some people really like you, some people don't.
Well, he's UF and you're Duke.
Well, that's true. We have some serious problems during basketball season. And so I thought that I didn't get a lot of credibility at the start.
So
as the trial went on, I built that credibility.
Agreed, 100%. And I think Megan said it when she interviewed you. There were many people who were not Greg Anderson fans at the beginning of the trial, but you sure showed your cards and won everybody over. And I think that included the judge. So, Greg, I know that we've got very limited time with you today, but probably nobody better positioned to summarize the findings or the decisions, the orders that were issued by the judge today. Can you kind of give the audience your perspective on what he decided today? Because many in the audience have not had a chance to read through all 40, 50 pages. But there were 4 documents. One addressed mediation, making it mandatory. One addressed the motion for juror misconduct leading to a new trial, and that was shot down because, again, Paul testified honestly and credibly, and none of the Reddit accusations were found to be credible. The third was around the goodness, got them all in front of me. Denying the new trial, sanctions, but then the big one, the 17-page dog on order for post-trial motions. Can you summarize that and tell us what you feel was most important coming out of those decisions?
For Paul and the other jurors' sake, I thought that his order about juror misconduct being so strong was absolutely the correct thing to do. And I want all the jurors, to know that the court could have gone so much further. But you have to understand that this court saw the law, but also the equities of the case. And so a lot of his decisions where he could have gone a lot farther, he could have had every ability to report a few of those lawyers on the other side to the Florida bar.
Yeah.
Judges can do and are encouraged to do if they see serious wrongdoing. And he had it right there. And he expressed it the way that he felt he was misled. And then he stopped short. But I want everybody to understand why he did that. He didn't want to complicate this case, because the ultimate goal was to compensate the Kowalskis, find justice for them the best that he could, and get this case over. And that's what they emphasize in judge school. You got to conclude the case. You have to close the file. You can't leave files just hanging out there for years and years, you have to bring a resolution. That's justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. And Judge Carroll took that to heart. And he knew, based on what he'd seen with the defense, that they were never going to stop. They were going to use every possible trick, ethical or not, to keep this case going, because their whole goal was to burn out the Kowalskis and bankrupt Anderson Glenn and Jen and I. It was clear. And so when he did not go after the individual lawyers or the firm about the direct misrepresentations, particularly with Paul's case, he was actually doing the Kowalskis a favor. Paul and Yolanda, they paid the price in the sense that they should have had further vindication, and in another world, in another circumstance, a judge given free rein would have likely come down on the other side like a ton of bricks. So they sort of gave their how do I say this? They gave their efforts and their dignity up to a certain extent so that ultimate justice for the Kowalskis would be done, if that makes sense. Because I think they deserved much more in the way of comment and sanctions against the other side that was so bitterly against them for no reason and said the things that they said. So my apologies out to Paul and Yolanda and to the rest of the jurors, to the extent they've been questioned. I think it's a horrible thing that would happen to them.
So does the judge's actions?
That's just part of it.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but so does the judge's actions articulated this morning, does that put an end to the J. Hatch, Reddit, Hill Ward Henderson nonsense?
I don't think anything possibly excluding nuclear war or an IMP strike will put an end to the Reddit and defense counsel view of this. I don't think that people, and it's a problem in our society, I think that people get an idea in their heads for different motivations that nobody can really fathom. And then once they're challenged, the facts and logic and reason no longer prevail, but they're just going to stick to their guns no matter what. And that was the problem with Johns Hopkins through this whole thing, that they just could never accept that their view was wrong. And I tried to explain that, and you did. I mean, you did, Joe. You were trying to explain to them in so many words in your testimony, look, here's how you effed up. Here's why everybody in the medical industry knows you effed up. So get it together and stop effing up. Essentially, if I could, part of your testimony was that way. And so will they ever stop? No, they will not stop. And it brings us to the point then of the analysis of the appeal and whether that should or will move forward or not. So you can either take me that way, or I can go back to analyzing the order on directed verdict.
Well, just kind of the key, again, limited. I know I've got limited time with you, but just kind of
more time.
No problem, but I told you were getting unshaven and t-shirt guy, so
Jen would never let me get out there on that. She's too full shots ending up somewhere on YouTube.
Yeah, the internet is forever, isn't it, Jen?
Yeah.
But again, Greg, I think that for Judge Carroll on page 4 goes through finding by finding. After it is all said and done, even under J. Hatch's requested more generous scope of immunity, the reality remains J. Hatch battered Maya Kowalski on at least 2 separate occasions. J. Hatch falsely imprisoned Maya Kowalski. J. Hatch intentionally inflicted emotional distress on Maya Kowalski. J. Hatch intentionally inflicted emotional distress on Beata Kowalski, and on and on and on. I mean, he spells out a complete endorsement of the jury's findings, and with the exception of adjusting, I think it was $45 million out of the jury's recommended award through the remitter process.
A little less than that. Yeah. Okay.
He summarily dismissed everything that the Hillward Henderson lawyers threw at him.
Well, it's interesting to put things in context of human beings. And as all good trial lawyers do, I became a student of Judge Hunter Carroll and spent a long time looking at his background, looking at where he's been, even looking at former partners of his, looking at their experience, looking through his prior trials and the orders he'd written, looking obviously through his appellate cases and seeing his reasoning on things. These are all things that if you know what you're doing, if you're a pro, and there's few pros left out there in the legal practice, but if you're a pro, you get to know the judge and you really concentrate on what you think that judge, based on personality and background, wants to hear. And with Judge Carroll, it was obvious, he was incredibly bright. I mean, he clerked for the Supreme Court, and you could tell in his orders how erudite he was in his knowledge of the law. But I'll tell you one thing that, frankly, at the first stunned me, and then I appreciated, was that there's a doctrine under law called the tipsy coachman doctrine. And it's an old English case. And what it says is essentially that if the judge doesn't give a reason for the ruling, the appellate court is supposed to look at every possible means of upholding the judge's ruling. So most experienced judges know that if they just say denied or granted, that the appellate court, if somebody does take them up, those wordsmiths on the second DCA here are going to look at all the law and all the arguments, and they're going to then look and see what the parties raised as arguments, and they're going to narrow it down to that, and then they're going to bring all the law in, and the judge has broad discretion in most instances. So the point of this I'm trying to say is that most judges don't write long orders. Now, on summary judgment motions, which they're called dispositive, meaning they can just resolve the whole case, judges are obligated by the new rules of civil procedure that came in 2017 or 18? I think, or was it like 2021? I don't know. It's been a while. But recently, for me, in my practice, they've changed it to the federal rule where judges have to really be specific on summary judgment orders. But it doesn't say anything about any other orders, right? So on summary judgment orders, you have to be specific to certain things and cite law and facts and come to a conclusion and go through your reasoning. But other motions, no, you don't have to do that. But Judge Carroll wrote probably 2 novels worth of orders in this case and let them file and argue so many more motions than any judge I've ever been before in my entire career.
Really?
There are over 4,000 docket entries in the case. Okay. I was looking at a case I have, and it was complex, construction, destruction of a roof, where we had 5 subcontractors and our general contractors, and every one of the subcontractors had an insurer. Most of them had excess insurers. I mean, we had 20, 25 people in terms of lawyers involved in this case, right?
Yeah.
And it had been going on for 2 years. And we had yet to reach 500 docket entries. 500. In what most lawyers would say is the most litigation heavy, for no apparent reason, a lot of times, that you'll ever see, which is construction litigation.
Yeah.
And yet in this case, we're over 4,000. That is got to be a record beyond all. And the reason I say that is that Judge Carroll didn't have to do all this. And he put himself out on the line every time he did one of those detailed orders, because the law is that if the court doesn't state a reason for the ruling, then the appellate court can look at any reason possible to uphold that judge. But if the judge states a reason, well, then the appellate court's going to judge them on that reason. And Judge Carroll, time and time and time again, put himself out there with written orders where he recited in detail exactly why he was finding what he's finding.
Yeah. And one of the things that stood out for me in the 4 documents that were released this morning, I know at the December 15th hearing, where Jay Hatch argued to interview Juror 1, there was a conversation at the end of that, after you were kind of on to the housekeeping part, about mediation. And there was a broad agreement from both sides of the counsel tables that mediation had not been successful before, and that the likelihood of success in the future was, viewed skeptically. What I thought was interesting was, as he ordered the mediation, he was very, very specific about not just sending representatives, but sending representatives with authority to get something done. And he wants it all done by the middle of April. So the audience broadly is expecting that an appeal is coming, that there will be settlement discussions at least around the mediation. Is there any reason to believe that at least one, and let's clarify this, a judgment for the $213 million has not been entered, but there are check marks in place for that to happen. I think there are 2 things that need to be done before he will enter that judgment. But is there any reason to believe that the mediation could be successful with all of the leaders that he's ordered to the table?
Well, first, audience, understand that Dr. Joe here picking up on that is pretty freaking amazing, because most professionals, even if they're sophisticated in medicine or accounting or wherever else, don't pick up on that. So Dr. Joe has definitely given you a lead on something that most people would pick up on. Having now massaged your butt a little bit, I would tell you that I have never been a fan of mediation in this case. I will tell you a brief history leading up to my conclusion, which is that the morning that Maya's photo appeared on the cover of People magazine, and that 4 or 5 page story came out, was the date of our second mediation.
No kidding.
This is after we had gotten Brian Haskell, and who's the counsel for Kathy Beatty, and Suncoast, who, by the way, is a fine attorney and did a brilliant job, because think about it. If he hadn't gotten his clients out, if he hadn't gotten her out, can you imagine going back to your client and say, we only had a few million in coverage. I think you got about 100 million in excess that you're going to have to deal with. So, Brian did a brilliant job getting his client out of there, and was a gentleman throughout the case. But was vigorous in his presentation. But
He and I graduated at the same law school.
that's right. They were both Stetson grads, and hopefully he, I don't know, deference there a little bit.
And did he represent Kathy or Sally Smith?
He had Sally Smith, and I'm sorry if I said that. Sally Smith and Suncoast.
Yeah.
On it. And so, in terms of trying to get things mediated, that morning, Maya's picture appeared, and we knew it, and we brought it in, and we put it in our at the last minute. We put it in our PowerPoint. So we went through this PowerPoint and laid out the whole case. And this was probably 3 or 4 months before the last trial before this. Like, the last trial before this was in April of 2022. So it must have been in like February or March, January, February, or March of 2022, before the first attempt to try the case. And if I were on the defense and I saw that, I'd be pulling my clients aside and saying, well, you know what? It doesn't really matter what the facts are now.
Yeah.
Because she's a presentable plaintiff. She's got an incredible story. And you can rely on me to puncture holes in every technical defense and every extreme claim they make. But when you get down to the essence of it, we're in effing trouble. Okay? We're in trouble.
Yeah.
And this thing could go well in excess of what I originally estimated, and it could get up near your policy limits. So if you can do anything possible to settle this case, do it. And anybody that knows me knows I spend a lot of time on the other side. One of the few lawyers that does. I do both sides of it. And so I wake up every morning and I go over and I advise senior VPs of insurance and senior claims adjusters and general counsels and manufacturers of the same thing, but from the other side. And that's what I tell them, because you've got to get down to the reality of the case. Hence, in this circumstance, when that came out, I expected Johns Hopkins to come forward and want to settle the case. Like, come on, we beat 40 out of your 52 summary judgments. What is going on here? And you know what? I guess I can say now, since it doesn't make any difference anymore, but at the end, the first thing was they had no interest in settling unless we got down, let me put it this way, to an amount of money that would have not paid for 1 year of their defense costs. If you can estimate what they spent in about a year on defense costs, that's the value they put on the entire case. And they filed proposals for settlements, which we're filing, so we can tell you. They filed around that time after the mediation. They filed proposals for settlement, which in Florida carry with them fees and costs if they beat them by 25% either way. They offered $1 for Jack's claims, $1 for Kyle's claims, $1 for Beata's claims, and they offered $1 million, but they offered $1 for punitive damages for Maya's claims. That was their proposal for settlement. So they offered $1,005,000, and the offer to Maya was so complicated that no lawyer would have ever even thought about accepting it. So that was what that was the basis, the way we went into this thing. And through the course of it, you know what? It's like I don't even know the analogy yet to describe it, but I guess the Monty Python thing with the knight, the flesh was pretty accurate because it didn't matter what the facts were and how a logical, rational human being, lawyer or not, would look at the case and go, man, you got problems here. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter to any of the senior risk people to the extent we could find any. Didn't matter to them. Sure as hell didn't matter to Howard and the boys. Didn't matter to anybody on their side. It was madness. It was, the only way I can say it is, Joe, it was madness for somebody who spent 40 years in this business.
But if you go into mediation with a judgment, that realigns their motivation, right? Or am I just being Pollyanna about it?
Dude, I don't know in this instance. I would love to say that they would be rational human beings. Let me put it to you this way. And I calculated our recovery a little more than yours. I thought it was about 10 million more, but I may be wrong. So sorry, let's put it 15 to 2.5, somewhere around in there. Is somewhere between 52 and 58 million, excuse me, $52,000 to $58,000 a day in interest.
Yeah.
And I've done the calculations because I've got a demand letter I'm putting to them. And I was looking at it, and if it was at my numbers, it would be at 9%. We're talking about $20,385,000 a year, which divided by 365 is $55,849.31 per day.
Wow.
Which means that if you take a year and a half for appellate work, which is a pretty good average for particularly a case where they're really going to be focusing on this, you're talking about $437,876 in interest alone to go and see if they can knock the verdict down anymore.
Yeah.
And if they go in a challenge and we had to go and retry it, I mean, what are the chances just of those things? The point is, the court, and again, Judge Carroll, I've developed, I don't know how you describe our relationship anymore. It's some mutual respect that with the judge is probably tolerance for me, but I completely and ultimately respect his intellect, because the way he set up that verdict, so that every single different event is categorized and has its own award of damages and award of punitives and questions about intent and so forth. There's no way to retry this case, which is all a way of saying, I mean, I always come back to, well, not always. Sometimes I come back to the actual question, and the actual question is, will it go? Will it go anywhere? I would like to think that at this point that a circuit judge that had given them every benefit of the doubt, and a jury that was completely open-minded to start with, and a public reception at the start that wanted to see and press us on our proof, that after all of that got rejected, and now they are facing between $215 to $225 million in a judgment against them. I would like to think they would be rational. They would come in, they would realize that at this point, they're just making us money at 9.1%. And they would come in and say, okay, look, let's put this thing to bed. And they try to save, 5 or 10 million here or there. But they'd ultimately just say, look, we're not going to spend another $1 million on appeal to get our ass handed to us. And keep this in mind, Joe. There are consequences for actions.
Yeah.
And if you appeal this and you bring up the issues that I think that they might bring up, you could very well create law on these facts that every insurance company in the state will come down on you as the biggest a-hole dumbass in the history of law, because you just opened up all of that Chapter 39 litigation,
Yeah.
and you just made law that on intentional infliction of emotional distress of somebody that committed suicide, you can get liability. There are half a dozen issues here that Judge Carroll, in his brilliance, found the right law and applied, that if converted to an appellate decision, are going to fundamentally change law.
Yeah.
State of Florida.
And you gave him recognition for being smart, well studied in the law, had the experience of clerking with the Supremes in Tallahassee, I believe, right?
Yep.
But you know what? And again, what a fan I am of his judicial temperament. I thought he balanced his approach beautifully. But we're looking at a judge that gets upheld at the appellate court 93% of the time, right? This is not a guy who, who makes unsubstantiated decisions. This is a guy who
fly by night. He's not somebody that they watch, and the appellate courts do watch. Just so you know, the appellate judges are not. I mean, they're human beings. And they read the newspapers, and they read the appellate cases that come out. And they're all very, I think it's appropriate to use the term, jealous of their own district's law, in the sense that they're not, if you're in the Second District Court of Appeals, which has the 12th Circuit, and about 5 others, this area, the Tampa Bay area, they're very attuned to what the law is in the circuits that they are in charge of. And my experience in oral arguments, and before most of them, is they're not so concerned about what the Fourth Circuit said about something or the First Circuit said about something. They want to know what we said previously on this, because they're very concerned about stare decisis, which means consistency in the law.
Right.
So they want to make sure that the law in the Second District is cohesive and rational. And they're appellate judges, so they're worried about things that never cross my mind, about they're a lot smarter than me, but they're worried about the consistency of holdings and how, if they hold something different, it's going to change the way that all of us under them do things. And so in this instance, I think that the second will be intrigued by this case. God, I hope they're not too intrigued by it. But the point, I think that Hunter Carroll has built up, for lack of a better term, a great rap with these judges, and I've seen him get affirmed on incredibly complex cases. I know he wants to go.
Wasn't he 95% range?
93% affirmance rate, and I know he wants to go to the Supreme Court. A lot of people don't know it, but I'm not ultra liberal by any stretch of the imagination. Even doing plaintiff's law, I tend to be more conservative. People ask me, I'm more of a Kennedy Democrat, which is the same thing as a Reagan Republican, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do get a chance to talk to our governor because of that now and then, and even in the midst of this case being high profile but undecided, I told the governor, and this was actually this was in the fall of 2022, and it was one of these things where you actually get a chance to talk to the governor. And I talked about, because it was important to me, one of the reasons I donated to have the chance to talk to the governor. And I talked about this whole Chapter 39 thing, which I thought was a freaking nightmare. And I expressed to him my concerns about what it was doing, that I didn't have any dog in this hunt. I don't do family law. I don't do any of this stuff. I just came in on this case. And it was interesting. His view was that he had just gotten past, I don't even think it had been signed into law, unfortunately for us, the Parents' Bill of Rights in Florida. There's a lot of law to decide, but if the appellate courts stick by the wording of the legislature on that Parents' Bill of Rights, parents get to decide. That's gonna cure a lot of problems. But the point is, I had a chance to talk to the governor about it, and he's an interesting guy. He's really bright. He loves Nick. He's Navy and Harvard, and Nick is Navy and Harvard. So, but I told him, I said, I got this judge down there I'm dealing with, Governor. I think he's going to be on your radar. And that was the point I didn't really like Hunter Carroll. He kicked my ass on a bunch of stuff, but I had enough respect for the judge to tell the governor that I thought that win, lose, or draw, I thought he would end up on the governor's radar. And I'm kind of proud of that now. I don't think Judge Carroll likes me anymore, but at least I picked right of what I thought on the law.
Yeah, I do not have, thank goodness, I do not have the experience before judges that you do. But I have been in maybe a half dozen courtrooms. He is in a class by himself. I mean, and again, I just, candidly, I have no idea.
Justice.
I'm sorry?
Do you know this? Megan. A couple of your Megan Fox, a couple of your competitors or fellow, they call him the Tuft of Justice.
The Tuft of Justice, yeah. But
I love that.
But I came to respect him substantially and profoundly through this process. So
he treated you very well. He treated you with great respect. I don't know if you noticed that about him, but he was really tuned into you. He was watching you and considering what you said, and he was making notes at the time.
Really?
I'll ask you a question. It's not that I don't care about you, but I care more about you. I'm looking at what the jury and the judge is taking down. I'm wondering if they're scribbling, right? Yeah. I want to know, and I go off body language there, and you got great body language from Judge Carroll.
I'm oblivious to that because I was just focused. I was right there,
That should be.
I knew that Howard was doing his absolute best to put me in a body bag. So I was trying to avoid giving him anything to work on. But, one of the things so there are really two things that my audience wants to see happen. One is they want the final judgment entered. And we'll address that in a second. The second is they want Dracula. They want the IJ documents. So let's so on page 15 of the order on post-trial motions, the judge says, quote, "This order is not the judgment or judgments and does not complete the judicial labor remaining in the case. The remitter election periods have not expired. So basically, you have to work with your client, Jack, and the family, and decide if you're going to accept the remitter decisions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the remitter election periods have not expired, and the mechanics of the set-off, the out-of-court settlement with Sally Smith, have not been resolved. After those two issues have been resolved, the court will enter the judgment, singular or plural, and if elected by the personal representative, a new trial. Safe to say that you'll be working to move quickly, and Hill Ward Henderson will be dragging their feet on resolving those two issues?
This much is certain. However, if you look at the order, and I think it's page 11 at the very top, bottom of 10, top of 11, I think he acknowledges that we, in fact, elected that we were going with the wrongful death as opposed to the survivorship.
Right.
So that thing, I think that part of it, to the extent the court cited that as a potential problem, I think we've already resolved. And so, unless we, within his time, maybe he's given us time to rethink it, but that's not going to change. The next thing then is the set off, and you're right. Howard's trying to do everything possible to delay this, and we had presented to Howard 6 weeks ago a proposal that we keep everything about the Sally Smith settlement confidential, as we're required to do by the documents and otherwise. And then we just informed the court, and now I can tell you, since it's public knowledge in about 20 different places, 2.5 million set off, which I believe he incorporated into his judgment already. So you've got the 2.5 million. He's just asking for confirmation of that. We said to Howard, hey, Howard, look, we all know what the number is. Can we stipulate to what it is so we don't have to go through this nonsense? And of course, Howard hasn't given us anything. He hasn't given us a decision. He's given us what Howard does, which is, oh yeah, well, we'll consider that. And then I call him again and he goes, yeah, we're still thinking about it. I'm like, Howard, no brainer, Budrow. It is the 2.5. Can you I'm actually trying to protect your co-defendant. This is not necessarily good for me. Will you just freaking stipulate it's 2.5 million?
Filed that under confidentiality this afternoon.
So we just filed it. Yeah, Jen just pointed out. I told Nick we filed it today. We filed the settlement agreement. We got agreement from Brian, who's the defense counsel for Sally Smith's insurer, and so we got that done. So we got the 2.5 done. We've got the election done, and so then the entry of the judgment will come pretty quick. The big issue now is post-verdict, pre-judgment interest from November 9th, when the verdict came in, until whenever he does it sometime in January, let's say on the 10th. So over this period of time, from November 9th through January 10th, so what are we talking about? 62 days, 61 days. So 61 days times the amount.
It's a nice $350,000.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is, because you look at it about 55,000. Yeah, so you're talking about $350,000 that we would frankly like to recover. And you know what? I have this idea in my mind that our court taketh away, and yet may giveth, in the sense that we've got a motion for attorney fees, which we can talk about, a motion for costs, which are astronomical in this case, a motion for the application of post-verdict pre-judgment interest, And then we've got our motion for sanctions, which is a whole nother thing that your viewers are going to go, let me use the term apeshit over when what was going on there. But the point of that is it allows us to go back much earlier than our proposal for settlement to set the start date for our attorney fees. And it allows, by reference and by relevance, for me to talk about little things like, oh, losing my house,
Yeah.
my,
Right.
and no vacations for forever, and those kids growing up never knowing a time when the Kowalski case wasn't a topic of discussion or a big thing in their lives.
Yeah.
Not being able to take them on extended vacations, which otherwise my success would allow us to do, or being able to do all the cool stuff that I love to do. All that stuff went by the wayside for years. And I got to tell you, Joe, I'm dying to tell that story, because when people hear what was actually going on behind the scenes, you think they're pissed now. They're going to go berserk when they start hearing the kind of shit that we had to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It beyond. Okay, so again, I've been practicing a really long time. I've been doing this, and I've seen a lot of lawyers in a lot of different states. And I've learned over the years to not exaggerate it and just take it in stride for the most part. But when people learn what was really going on to us and the Kowalskis, they're going to freaking firebomb that law firm. I shouldn't say that, but I just meant that as a reference. But it was so horrific what we went through. It was so emotionally destructive and horrifying to watch. I didn't want to go to a deposition. I didn't want, for most of the case, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I wanted to get away from these people. You know how it is? Maybe you have neighbors, or maybe you have people you work with, and you just know they're freaking assholes. And every time you're around them, it upsets you and you can't sleep that night.
Yeah.
You know, kind of people.
Yeah.
Imagine by court order, you had to deal with them every single freaking day for 5 years.
Yeah.
People that you absolutely, positively, if you could possibly get away from them, you would never, ever want to be around them. And that's what my family had to deal with. And
well, Jennifer, I did not realize that I was getting unplugged, Greg, this
Oh,
afternoon.
First, yeah, she's out there.
Oh, okay. I thought she was sitting with you. I
probably left when I started talking about this stuff, because to this day, I mean, my wife are just totally traumatized by what they heard and saw.
Well, I know because of the friendship that we developed in all your free time as you were prepping for this trial. I know some, not all, but some of the sacrifices that you and Jen and the kids made, but you were doing it on behalf of a family that you loved nearly as much, the Kowalskis. And again, you meet the Kowalskis and you have to fall in love with them. such good people. But, you know, I know some of the sacrifice that you made, and it's remarkable how you were able to persevere and that you were able to make choices. And I think this is one of the things that the advocates love about you, Greg, is they appreciate that you were willing to put your family at risk. You were willing to compromise their security in order to take care of Maya. And candidly, that's not what most of us think about when we think about lawyers, right? Nothing personal, buddy, but that's not who we, you know, that's not a characteristic that we typically associate with your profession. And I think that's one of the things that people really love about you. And of course your laugh, but you know, it's admirable what you and Jen were willing to do in order to help take care of Maya.
Thank you, Joe. It's not something that you start out in a case thinking you're going to do. It wasn't like I got into this case and said, oh, and by the way, you know, all those plans you had for that catamaran in the Caribbean you're going to take for 3 weeks, and
Yeah.
you know, and expanding your workshop at your house and all that stuff. You're going to have to put that on hold for 4 or 5 years. It wasn't like I started out that way, and it really should have never been that way. It should have been a normal trial. Now, the debacle of COVID did mess things up for a year. And I understand that, and I don't blame anybody for that. Well, I do blame people. I blame the god of Johns Hopkins, Anthony Fauci, with his floor that place. Yeah, he is definitely their king god. But I do blame him, but I don't blame the rest of it on anyone other than it just happened. But that was the delay for a year that hurt us. That was something we could have recovered from pretty quickly. What we couldn't recover from was a firm like Hill Ward. And that's not even true, because there's a lot of great lawyers at Hill Ward and Henderson. I'm
friends with several of them.
You and Steve, you know, he uses them. I thought I had a good relationship with him because there's only 2 law firms in Florida that Stellantis, used to be Chrysler, uses. And one of them is us, far longer than anybody else, since 1984. And then Hill Ward. And Hill Ward's always gotten the big product cases, which I lusted after. But we've gotten everything else. And so but I didn't see it as competitors so much, because we'd see them Chrysler used to have, Stellantis used to have council meetings. You know, the last one was probably in 2020 or 2019 down in Orlando. Everybody came down. The Hill Ward guys were there, you know, and you know, we're competitors, but I admired them. They were a fine firm, started by a great attorney, and you know, I always held them in high esteem. And then to have this happen, you have to remember, if you have an image built up of somebody or an organization that you hold in high esteem, you always give them the benefit of the doubt. So when you get into one of these things and then you start having things happen that you know are not right, but you always try to put the best spin on it, the best because you can't believe that that would happen, and you don't want to believe that a firm of that quality would do stuff like that. But as more and more stuff happened, that's when it came home to me that, man, we're never getting out of this. These people never going to settle. They're in it to destroy us. And I don't know, maybe it was like the corner of the market with Chrysler Stellantis or FCA Stellantis. I don't know what their theory was behind it. That could have been it, partially to get rid of the only other Florida firm. I don't know what their motivations were. Whatever they were bizarre. I'm dying to hear what my Stellantis people have to say.
Yeah.
They're two big firms in Florida. Just went, the third most populous state, just went head to head.
And
the defense thought there was no liability whatsoever.
And dare I say that it was not a technical knockout. It was an early round knockout. But and I think that it was, one of the things that we can explore on a future conversation, Greg, is the strategy of delaying the trial for years.
And with
am I off base in thinking that there probably was a perception that delaying was to their advantage because this 12-year-old girl was such a sympathetic plaintiff, but they weren't counting on her developing into someone who is smart, someone who is top of her class, someone who is tenacious, someone who is poised, someone who was able to advocate for herself despite some really wretched experiences in the healthcare system, and someone who could
advocate for herself,
but also be incredibly relatable.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing arrogant about that kid.
Nope. They never caught her in one inconsistent statement with 5 hours and hours, day-long depositions.
Yeah.
With every opportunity, they could never catch her one time.
Yeah.
Inconsistent statement from what she testified to before. And I think that really affected the jury.
And I think it speaks to the way that she was raised by Jack and Beata. I never had the opportunity to meet Beata, obviously, but I feel like I got to know Beata through Maya's testimonies at first, and subsequent conversations that I've had with Maya and her brother Kyle. I think they are such great kids, and I'm saying kids. Hell, they're about to go to college, but I think they are a very, I think they're a wonderful reflection of their parents, both their parents.
They are, but I'll tell you something more insidious that I didn't talk about during the course of the trial, but I thought about a lot. They knew that CRPS can take you out of the picture real quick.
Yeah.
They knew that a lot of people under great stress to begin with, and you add in CRPS, either take their own lives or do things to themselves to render themselves to be completely incapable of advocating for themselves through drugs or an accident or bizarre behavior or an arrest. Something, if you're in that much pain, under that much stress, Most people will have a negative reaction in a way that's a positive for the defense. And I am absolutely convinced to my bone that there was a discussion at some time among Howie and the boys and and whatever doctors at Johns Hopkins they could get in on the conversation. And the gist of it was the longer this thing goes, the better for us.
Yeah.
Did anybody come out and say, hey, we're going to get this kid to commit suicide too? Or, hey, this kid's going to go out and get busted and get a felony conviction for being in a car with a bunch of cocaine. Or, hey, this kid's going to have some kind of physiological reaction and end up incapable of testifying for herself. Or, hey, what we need is for her to go in and have a complete emotional breakdown and end up getting Baker acted or committed for about a year, proving our point. I don't know that those conversations went on, but every single instinct I've got after 40 years of doing this, I lost track of how many trials, ugly trials, and knowing these people.
Yeah.
I got to say, more likely than not. But here's the other thing you got to remember. At this level, nothing is ever said. It's like how you get rid, and you've been there, you've been at board meetings, you've been at committee meetings, and somebody's on the outs, and nobody comes out and say, that guy's an asshole, get rid of him. There's a comment made that's like, I'm not sure that he's going to fit in our future program, or I'm not sure for him to. There's some comment made like that, and there's a nod around the table, and the person's done for.
Yeah.
They're just done for. There's a memo to somebody, and the next thing you know, they're put on some kind of suspension, and then they're out. And it's like that.
Yeah.
It just takes a nod around the table. They're freaking done for. And I think that that's probably the types of messages that were going on between Johns Hopkins attorneys and some of their medical people involved, who I never liked a single one of them. I mean, I thought that there were some nice nurses there, but those doctors, well, that's not true. I thought that, what's his name? The guy that testified about Maya being a new kid after the.
Oh yeah, the pulmonologist.
The pulmonologist.
Yeah.
I thought that was a straight up guy, and that was one of the most uncomfortable people I've ever seen when I took his depo, because everything inside that guy wanted to say, look, this worked for this kid. This kid definitely had CRPS. I saw her. I read up on it. I know it went on, and this helped her. And I saw her after that. He wanted to come out and say all that.
Yeah.
But that guy had the look of somebody that had like his kid in a closet.
Dr. Kreisman. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking
his pressure.
Well, and sometimes we telegraph our punches, right?
Yeah.
And when I opened up the 17-page order on post-trial motions, and for those of you who haven't seen it, it's 17 pages of single space, and it begins with this. Greg, I know you've read it. Order on post-trial motions. Pain more intense than childbirth. Pain more intense than kidney stones. Pain more intense than amputating one's limb. The worst pain imaginable, the degree and intensity which most of us cannot comprehend. Pain so intolerable that the condition is nicknamed the suicide disease. And that was just the beginning. This was Judge Carroll, again, endorsing and affirming the testimony that the jury had to sort through. And he goes on to talk about there can be no question the jury credited Maya Kowalski's version of the evidence. He talked about how a lot of the evidence that was placed before the jury was contradictory and complicated and complex. And he, in 17 pages, this is a love letter to the jury and the hard work that they did.
I thought so.
I'll tell you what, I am. So I've had conversations with Paul, juror 1. Guess what? We went to the same high school. Now I'm older than he is, but his brother is actually a year ahead of me. So I am planning on having a conversation with Paul and Yoli, juror 1 and Hippo Lover. I would also love to talk with some of the other jurors and alternates. Because again, I think that, here is a very experienced judge telling them they did a great job in a complicated environment. I love this. I love this.
It was so, and I knew something like this was going to come out from him. I didn't know exactly where it would be on it. I had a good feeling that he would deny most of their motions, and I thought he would give a remediator to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But he's so freaking smart. He also reserved in there an ability to come back on the interest, cost, attorney fees, and sanctions. So that if he felt that the ultimate outcome wasn't quite what was as ultimately fair as he wanted, he gave himself plenty of options in terms of making it right. If he felt ultimately that some of his remediator was a bit too much, I think he left himself with an incredible alternative means of filling in the blanks, filling in the holes and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that this is coming from a trial attorney who didn't particularly like Judge Carroll through most of it.
Mm-hmm.
We were best buddies. We didn't know each other from Adam's House Cat before this, and certainly through the trial. Anybody that watched it, I was not his favorite person in the courtroom by any extent. Even given that, I will probably write a letter to the best of my ability. I can't do it right now, but when it's done, I will. I'll probably write a letter on his behalf, because you don't come across judges who will put in this kind of time and effort on a case like this, because it is a case fraught with problems, and it's a case that can make you look really bad, and it's a case that's going to destroy all your timekeeping and docket in terms of which we saw. And despite the fact that the guy got so mad at me sometimes, I thought his head was going to blow off. It was tough. But despite that, what I admired was his tenacity and his willingness to work. And I don't know how his wife and kids made it through this, but I guess it's the same way my wife and kids made it through it, which was just determination to do what's right, because he certainly spent the time and effort to do what's right. So I'll tell you, I never said this in public, and I damn sure I've never said it about a judge that frankly hated me through most of my trial. But if the guy ever gets a nomination to the Supremes, or even to the second, not even, but to the second Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, more probably the public will hear about it at the Supreme Court level. But that's a man who doesn't care if he likes or dislikes you or what the story is. As he puts it, he calls balls and strikes.
Yeah.
He uses all of his intellect to make the best decision he can and let the chips fall where they may, because it was so easily to influence this case and buy himself political favor with Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd come in despite all the law and all the facts on our side. If he had found a way, which he could have, he's a smart guy, to help them get out of this. I mean, there's no telling how far politically he could have gone.
Yeah.
With support, and it wouldn't have come from Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
It damn sure would have come from people who like Johns Hopkins a lot.
Right.
And unfortunately, in our society, that can happen. It doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen, but it can happen. And everybody who's an adult and follows things like this knows it can happen. But Judge Carroll put all that aside, and he just did what he's supposed to do as a trial judge.
Yeah.
Wish more of him, even if he's going to hold me into contempt at some point.
Yeah.
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet. We're not done yet. I love it. So Greg, I've got several questions that I would like to bring from the audience to you, if I may.
Sure.
Again, a question about your pets. I know you've got pets.
Winter Dog, who's a white retriever, English white retriever. We got her from England. She went through a puppy school, so we didn't get her until she was almost 6 months. By the time we got her, she was so well trained that she would sit there with a bowl of food in front of her, and until you said, "Okay, eat," she wouldn't eat. It was that kind of training. We got Winter Dog. Unfortunately, she's got some hip dysplasia going on. She's only like 8, but she's got hip dysplasia, and that's not cool. And we're giving her all kinds of anti-inflammatories. And then we have 2 ragdoll cats. If anybody knows what those are, they're like Himalayans, but they're nice. And they don't hardly ever bite you. And they like to just be held, which most cats don't.
Yeah.
And so the kids are in love with the ragdoll cats, and we have I call them Fuzzball 1 and Fuzzball 2. I'm sure that's their real name, but that's all I know them as. And so then that, and I've always been a big aquarium guy. So right now we just have freshwaters, but I usually have at any one time 3 or 4 saltwater tanks going. And then I'm particularly fond of discus fish, which are absolutely beautiful, and they're about that big around. They look like discs, and I usually have a tank, 100-gallon of those going. None of those I'm doing right now because I freaking hate my house, and I'm trying to get out of here as soon as I can.
So I will tell you that hearing about a snow dog with a pedigree that went to training school and 2 Himalayan type cats, that sounds like pets that a kid from Duke gets. My state school, we got a rescue dog. And so
well, they're fun, and they have a lot less maintenance in my experience. He or she's taking good care of you.
yeah, my rescue dog is just fine. Thank you very much. Greg, how did you feel today after seeing the judge's response? He really put J Hatch in their place, in the opinion of Cale Smith.
Vindicated.
Vindicated. It's a good word.
And I hoped that everyone out there would see this order. I think everyone should download this order and keep it on their computer and know what was said here, because the law that was handed down under these circumstances, somewhere, somehow, in everyone's life, unfortunately, there'll probably be an issue or two like this. And this order really gives you a roadmap to a lot of righting the wrongs in our society, civilly, not criminally or anything else, but civilly. It really does. And for me, it won't really be. I'm the kind of person that doesn't believe anything's really going to happen until it happens. So when the check clears into our account, that's when I'll relax.
Yeah.
But until then, and I've been texting with Maya and Jack all day, until then, it's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I still have to make overhead. I mean, it costs me $250,000 a month to keep the doors open at Anderson Glen. We got 2 and about to be 3 offices and a lot of attorneys. I think we're up to, God, I don't even know how many, maybe 14 lawyers now, which I never planned for. And, we've got to keep those people fed. We've never missed a paycheck at Anderson Glen in 34 years.
Wow.
5 years. And I'm very proud of that, me and John, and now Nick, and always Jen. But it's hard to make payroll, and you just you do the best you can, but you got to keep the practical in mind in cases like this. You can't just go, oh, well, the judge agreed with us, so obviously in X amount of months, we're going to get some money. You don't know that.
No.
You really don't know that. In the law, what was it? I forget the name. Chris Sorcy, brilliant trial lawyer from Florida, said, there's no Las Vegas odds maker that would ever make money on what we do.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
We just terrific risk.
Well,
And
I
so
do know.
I'll be happy.
I have learned from the chat, particularly from Megan Fox, that Reddit is on fire today.
Couldn't happen to a better group of people.
I would love to have somebody feed that to us, or at least summarize it for us. But really nice note from Lauren Elizabeth. Says, Mr. Anderson, do you know how much we love you? What you've done for the Kowalskis is unbelievably admirable. Talks about you and Nick, and thank you, included me, being incredibly humble and strong and intelligent men. Thank you for being you.
And handsome with great hair. They need to put that
in. So Ruby asked, I thought Med-Mal breach was satisfied by the paucity.
I'm up for alumnus of the year at Duke University, and
serious?
Yeah, but I'm up against a bunch of extremely woke folk, and what I did, I think, was pretty concrete. But let's just say at the big universities now, it's really hard to get any recognition if you're what I am. But anybody who's interested, you could always write the Duke alumni office and tell them I did good.
We will start a letter writing campaign on your behalf. Greg, Ruby asked, I thought Med-Mal breach was satisfied by the paucity of cognitive behavioral therapy. No behavioral plan communicated or implemented. Why did the judge seem to rely only on Sally being an agent?
I don't know. That's a brilliant analysis. And, when I read that, I was a little, I was a little confused by that too. I think based on his predicate statements was that he was saying, I can't cover every single issue.
Yeah.
So I'm going to only cover those that I think the appellate court could possibly be interested in. And in this instance, I think his not subliminal, but his sophisticated, if you know what you're doing, message was, judges, I know if you read this record that there's such overwhelming testimony from Dr. Chopra and Kirkpatrick and you to support medical malpractice. Why am I wasting my time telling you stuff that you already know or can read? This was an issue of interest that they might appeal. So I'm going to talk to you about that. I think that was what he was doing, was saying, I'm not going to waste your time because there's so much incredibly great testimony from superb experts on our side that, why do I need to tell you that the sun's rising in the east, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, God knows with 4,000 with the volume of documentation provided, and the 5.5-year circuitous route to get to trial. I could understand why the judge would want to pick and choose what he comments on now.
What drives me nuts about all this is that even after all of this, it is still possible that, not probable, but it's possible that an appellate court could come back and find some way to reverse for a new trial. I would say the probabilities are less than 10%, maybe less than 5%, given the orders that the court has provided. But there's still a possibility, if everything went wrong or things happened that we could not possibly comprehend now, that even after all this work, it could still not work out. That's the thing that keeps me awake at night, is the concept that there are things that are still outside my control or my influence. And I hate the thought of that happening to the Kowalskis, and I double plus hate it for that happening to my family after everything they've been through. But that's the thing that's probably the scariest out of everything I do. You could do the best job in the entire world. You could be Vince Lombardi or pick your great coach winning the Super Bowl, and then later have somebody come back and say, yeah, I know you did a great job there, Green Bay in 66 and 67, but we've decided to rethink one of those calls by the refs, and we're going to take this trophy away.
Yeah,
that happened in my business. That's what makes it scary.
Yeah, and it's easy for us non-lawyers to kind of think that a new trial is no longer an option, given the way that Judge Carroll has knocked down all of the motions, requests for consideration.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
But if it goes to the second DCA, then everything's on the table again, right?
Everything's on the table, and one of the reasons we have Mike Tanner and Ken Bell, former justice on the Florida Supreme Court, and Mike, immediate past president of the Florida Bar, as appellate attorneys, is that I didn't like the way that the first continuance of this trial went down at all. I mean, I'm not going to get into it right now because I cannot afford it, but that scared the crap out of me. And so I'm trusting in the law, and I'm trusting into the fine judges there. And I know that we're going to get a fair shake this time, but boy, that first round was a scary, scary thing for me. That's why we ended up hiring. I would have liked to have thought we would have hired the very best appellate attorneys we could, although I've argued, I don't know how many, I've argued before the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth DCA on multiple occasions, the Florida Supreme Court twice, Georgia Supreme Court, the Delaware Supreme Court, the federal 11th, 5th, 4th, 9th Circuit. I've argued all over the country in appellate courts, and I think done a pretty good job. I've learned over the years that to let it go to the appellate attorneys that do this kind of stuff, but still it scares the shit out of me. Not to be too blunt about it, but shit can still happen. Doing everything I can to protect the Kowalskis, but stuff can still happen,
I will tell you, Megan Fox just texted me with 5 pages of screenshots from Reddit. They're definitely not seeing the world the way we are today.
That's what happens when you live in a dream world. You got to get out of your basement, baby.
Be careful. They're coming after you, Greg. They're coming after you.
Oh, I'm so unsophisticated and all this stuff. I don't know how they would do it, and I'm well armed. I don't think they would ever mess with me. If they did, they must really enjoy circles in their forehead. But I really don't worry about people like that. I mean, I've had threats. When I was representing the trustee in bankruptcy of Ryder PIE Trucking, we had the mob on the other side. I was taking down the Lenny the Looter Palullo, who stole $40 million out of Ryder PIE Trucking in the late 80s, early 90s, and I got hired by the trustee in bankruptcy of PIE to take down the lawyers that had kind of looked the other way while he stole his money. And I was not a popular guy then, with some undesirables, and got calls in the middle of the night about if you ever go outside again, shit like that. And I don't know, I just got used to threats, so I don't really bug me too much. They're not going to do anything. If they try to do something to me, bring it on. And I've got a lot of friends who are in the software business, and I think we'll handle whatever they can do.
Well, and I do want to remind the crew.
And I do air gap everything, so there's nobody that can get to our records. I've air gapped everything to make sure that no matter what access you have, you can't get to the stuff that I need. I'd be worried about. So,
well, there's a lot of people who are interested in reading Iron 44, and I explained that the demand for the 24 copies that you have far exceeded the supply. So we are working with Gabby and you to get that available via Kindle or some kind of upload. And I can put you into that conversation.
You could really help me with that, because
I on behalf of my audience, I am going to advocate and work my tail off with Gabby to make that happen, put it into a digital format. They also would like to hear about Larry the Lizard. Was that who you mentioned the other night? And
the farting Fifth Avenue.
Yeah. And they definitely want you to follow through with your promise to write a book about your experience here.
Funny, I was just getting from our brilliant artist, writer, who's done a ton of
Sally the meme guru?
Yes. Have I sent you all of those proposed covers she's got yet?
She's actually been she's been copying me on a lot of them. Some of them are absolutely brilliant. I want to
have an audience contest. I really want to Sally has put together like 5 so far, and she says she's got 3 or 4 ideas. I want to put up, and I don't know how you can do it, Joe, but if we could find a way to post Sally's efforts for, and I guess I need to explain this to the audience, what's going on here. Ethically, and even just me morally, I cannot and would not ever interfere with the literary rights of the Kowalskis.
Right.
What the Florida Bar Rules of Professional Responsibility say is that I'm honor bound to either stay completely out of it about their story, or if I'm asked, to refer them to the right people and to help them. And so what I've done is I interviewed a number of different authors. I looked at a ton of authors to write Take Care of Maya, the book. And I had calls into John Krakauer, who wrote Into Thin Air.
In Air.
And a bunch of other great books. Sebastian Junger, who wrote The Perfect Storm.
Yep.
And then I got around to James DeFelice, who wrote American Sniper.
Right.
And I was part of the screenplay for that brilliant movie with Bradley Cooper. And, you know, out of all of them, I thought, I read some of his work. I went back and reread American Sniper. I loved his approach and his ability to write in first person, switch to third person and back.
Yep.
And having attempted to write a book myself, I had an inkling of just how difficult what they do is. And there's one other guy I was going to talk to about, I think a fantastic writer, Kurt Schlichter, out of LA, who's also a trial lawyer. And I love his stuff. And then another one was John Birmingham out of Australia. He's in he's not in Sydney. He's in a town right north of it. But in any event, I looked at everybody, and ultimately I thought that Jim would do the best job for what we had, which is all the long way of saying that James DeFelice is writing Take Care of Maya. And he's already gotten a couple of chapters going, and I expect that, given his resume, that one of the huge publishers, Random House, or I'm not sure, he named off like 5 he's published with. The guy's a pro. He's had books on the New York Times bestseller list. So he's doing Take Care of Maya, and I'm helping him every way I can. I mean, we just opened up everything we've got because my job is to protect and help the Kowalskis. And I take that very seriously. They're going to end up paying me about $30 million. So I figured the least I could do was help them on that. But anyway, the thing about it is, though, that you can write a book from the trial lawyer's perspective. And I can write something that just deals with what happened to us, me, meaning the law firm, the tactics at trial, and all the horrific stuff that happened to me and Jen and my lawyers within that context. I just need to make sure that it doesn't do anything to interfere with what Jim and Maya are doing. And Jim's been interviewing Maya, and I've seen a little bit about it, but I got to tell you, Take Care of Maya, the book, is going to be I'll bet you anything, it's going to be a New York Times top 5, if not bestseller. It's
really?
Oh God.
Yeah.
He knows how to capture it, and he talks to everybody and reads everything. And, you know, the guy, if he could do what he did in American Sniper for the Kowalskis, I just think it's going to be one of the best novels of 2024, 2025. So anyway, bringing it back to me. Eventually I get to the point. So the second book is after Take Care of Maya, is called Defending Maya, which is a bit of an oxymoron in that what I did was prosecute for Maya.
Yeah.
But as things went down, what I did was actually end up defending them from what Howie and company were doing.
Yeah.
and the legal system was doing to them than anything else. So the working title is Defending Maya. There are 5 or 6, maybe more, proposed covers out there, which I'd love for you to post up from Sally. And I really would like to hear the audience's reaction to them and find out which one they think is cool. And maybe the answer is none of them, but I'd like a little bit of audience feedback. So the jury fuck, where am I? The audience knows, I guess they are kind of the jury, but so they know the way it went down was I kept a little hand recorder by my bed during the trial in the War House. Remember the War House?
Yep.
Yep. And in that master bedroom I had off to the side there, and where we all met, not in the bedroom, but the house. And
I kept it to the living room. Thank you.
So I kept this little hand recorder next to me, digital recorder, and every day at the end of the day, I would come in and I would dictate what my thoughts were about what happened, my impressions of the judge, my impressions of the other side, how Nick was doing, how the rest of my team was doing, how the Kowalskis were doing, and just and then in context of what we were doing there. And sometimes it would only be 2 or 3 minutes, and other times it'd be 45 minutes. But I kept going and going and going, and I think I got probably 4 out of 5 days on there. So then the very brilliant and talented Gabby, who anybody who saw the trial, one of my legal assistants, has also got some editorial experience, publishing experience. And so Gabby's been editing it down. And then I have dictated the opening probably 5 chapters to what went on pre-trial. Although obviously there's going to be some gaps there, and some things I'm going to have to put together. But basically the jury, God dang, where's my head? I'm still in the trial. The readers are going to be able, the audience is going to be able to hear from not the start of the trial, not the start of the litigation, but probably the 3 or 4 months prior to us going to trial, up the way through trial, picking a jury, and then how things went all the way through the end of the trial. And then I've done a little bit of dictation after that, but mostly it's concluding with the verdict. But that will be then Defending Maya, and that will be about what the effects were on the inside, what was going on behind the scenes to get what people saw in the trial, how we got there, the people we had to talk to, all of the hellacious things we had to do to get witnesses and experts there. So I think it's going to be very interesting. I hope people like it. I'm not going to release it until Take Care of Maya is out.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we will, so full disclosure, there is a graphic artist in the UK named Sally Bearpark, and Sally has a graphic design company called Tuco, and she has been a fan favorite for some of the memes that she developed during the course of the trial. She sent me a meme that looks like it made me look like, well, actually she made the meme that is in the upper right corner of the screen that says Dr. Joe. She has a version of that one that actually makes my hair look like Tiger King. And I think it
is. I mean,
well, no, that's actually the tame one. There is another version, but anyway, we will post at your request, Greg. We will post, working with one of my moderators, we will post a variety of her suggested covers for Defending Maya, which I really think are fantastic. So thank you for your work, Sally. It's terrific, and we'll share some of your work with others in the audience.
Thank you,
really,
audience.
really terrific stuff.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, audience. I want no punches pulled if it's to me or Sally. If it's not what you think it can convey, then tell us, and we can go a lot of different directions. Sally is brilliant. She really is brilliant.
Yeah, she has been a constant source of entertainment. That's for sure.
We need to have, you know what? I really should do this for the center photos. I really need to collect all of those memes, right? You know, for the center photo part of the book.
Yep.
We really need to collect all of those, and some of our your readers better comments and things, because I think that adds so much. I think this is a groundbreaking trial in the sense that it's civil litigation. It's not a murder trial. It is more complex and more involved. And yet we have all these folks out there, and even the ones on Reddit who disagree vociferously, but still you got a lot of really smart people out there and caring people on our side that are interested in the story and are really helping develop it. And I think it's wonderful that folks are taking this interest in our legal system and in a case of this magnitude, because this is the last bastion true independent liberty in the country. I know I'm up there on a stand now.
Yeah.
But you know, where else can citizens get in there without anyone influencing them, without people trying to pay them off, bribe them, influence them unduly? This is the only place where citizens can go in and actually listen to just the facts.
Yeah.
And make their decision not based on, I'm sure on that jury, we had everything from ultra progressive woke people to ultra conservative people, particularly on that 12. And yet somehow these citizens got together and managed to deliver justice, and justice that really cannot be touched based on the way that it went down. And to me, this is one of the few ways left that an average citizen or average family like the Kowalskis can have a voice and really get redress for their wrongs. And so I think that this and the books that are going to follow, I think they're incredibly important.
Yeah.
I think they're important far beyond this case, to tell you the truth. I think that this case, the facts are so unusual and intriguing for the average person or any person. I think the fact that it attracted so much attention and people are so into it and people are commenting and helping in the sense of evaluating and posting what they think, good or bad.
Yeah.
I think it reinforces a lot of our fundamental rights as citizens, and how the government doesn't get to tell us everything to do. The government doesn't get to, and corporations don't get to tell us what we really feel or how we should feel it, or whether we should feel any intimidation for expressing that.
Yeah.
What other forum in our country allows something like this, where a family, a very middle class family like this that's been devastated, has an ability to go up against, and I was looking at the net worth of Johns Hopkins, the entire corporation, and it's something like $14 billion. And I think that's a gross underestimate, but still, how can the average American family go up against a $14 billion company?
Yeah.
With any chance? In other countries, particularly outside the first world, but I think even the first world, you try to do that in any other country, they freaking laugh at you.
Yeah.
They're not gonna let you do that. There's going to be some impediment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry on my soapbox, but I'm just a huge believer in the jury system and the ability for the average person to have a say.
Well, you know, one of the audience members named Crystal has pointed out that, you know, not a lot of civil trials get this much of a following, and the only one that really kind of compares is Depp v. Heard. And Greg, I love you, but you don't have the celebrity status that Johnny Depp does.
No,
not yet, at least.
You have to work on it.
It's coming. It's coming. But
well,
no, you're right. I mean, this was, you know, this. I think that there were so many elements, personality elements. There were personal elements in the personal tragedy of the Kowalski family. You know, even when you go back to Beata's upbringing and what she went through as a child, seeing her father, part of the solidarity movement in Poland, disappear for 30 days.
Exactly.
You know, as he was taken away. You know, there's so many amazing elements to this story, and again, you know, I've said it before, that would I do expert witness testimony again? Perhaps, but it would be very hard to find a case that had this much intrigue and interest, and surrounded by good people. At least on the plaintiff side, you know, there were just some really good people that I enjoyed, you know, getting to know in this process. You know, not just the Andersons, but, you know, certainly starts with you and Jen, the rest of the Morgan sisters. You know, Connie, someone asked who was the redhead that sat behind you at the trial, and that was Connie, and she was so helpful, and Gabby was so helpful, and Samantha, and just everything that happened to Samantha during the trial. I mean, my God, that's a story in and of itself, right? But you know, there were so many cool things about this trial. I feel very blessed to have been asked to be a part of it, and you know,
without you, and that's in a very real sense, Joe.
Yeah,
so everybody knows. Without your testimony, you were absolutely one of the key witnesses for that jury.
Oh, thanks.
Whatever I had planned out for you, your role, you exceeded it by because they loved you, and you really laid it out, and you put it in context. And context is everything. And for the jury to understand how hospitals operate and why this was, pardon my French, so fucked up. That really, to the jury, I think it sealed the deal with them. I think that they were very persuaded before you. I think they might have ruled in our favor, but I don't think they would have been as concrete, completely committed to the rightness of what they were doing without your testimony. I believe that. I'm not just saying it. I think you were a linchpin for us. So thank you.
Thanks.
And
well,
I'm
thanks.
I hope you can find another interesting case for you.
Well, I would, as I've said before, Greg, I would work with you again in a heartbeat. You know,
I don't know how many more I'm going to do, but Nick's always out there, right?
But and Nick was great to work with. Nick was when you were talking about the personality conflict and why, try to figure out why you weren't Judge Carroll's favorite. So one of the comments that I saw is that Judge Carroll seems to appreciate the ABCD of the way that Nick presents information, as opposed to your R, G, Q, T, skip around, and then you eventually bring it around to A and B. But listen, hey, there's a reason why Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors, right?
Well, a lot of people talk about that, and I recognize I'm an idiot savant in a lot of ways, more idiot than probably savant. But the way my mind works is not, and there's a lot of studies on this, not sequentially.
Yeah.
I don't build more. I take data from a lot of different sources generally about it, and then I finally come to a conclusion or a reason or a rationale or whatever I'm trying to do. And that is completely antithetical to the way that lawyers think.
Yeah.
It's a freaking miracle I passed the bar, and it's even more of a miracle that I got a great job with a good firm to start with, and then to be able to have all these things happen so that I could be here at this point really shows God works in strange ways. But Nick is the perfect counterpoint to that, or I don't know what you would call it, but he's a perfect partner for me because very few people's brains work like mine, thank goodness. And and I come up with intriguing, unusual, and I'm not scared to say oftentimes brilliant conclusions from the evidence. Whether they prove to be brilliant in the long run is another matter, but I do approach things from a completely different mindset than 99% of lawyers. But that alone won't get you there.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody that gets it organized and backs up the proof behind what you're doing and sets it all up. And that's why Nick is so wonderful, because that guy, he's just one of the smartest people I've ever met. He's just right on it all the time. He's a pilot. I'm a pilot. We think a lot that way. But I mean, top of his class at Harvard Law School, and every accolade in the world. And then to come out, and he got hired by what's arguably the best firm, certainly the largest firm in Jacksonville, Rogers Towers, and they, like idiots, and I got a lot of friends over there, so like idiots, they put Nick in like real estate, and then they stuck him in the library to research.
Oh God.
Yeah, he hated it. Wasn't using his skill set at all. He's a pilot. He's used to excitement. He's used to challenge. He's used to risk. And when I interviewed him, I could just sense that about him, and he was just so restless to get out from under.
Oh, really?
Yeah, God. And it took a little while, and we had to work really hard to get more of his creativity and dispose of inhibitions about certain things he could do and not do in terms of arguments and theories. But that guy's going to do a lot better than me. I think he's going to surpass me in a few years, hopefully. Island in the Caribbean. But I'm teaching him everything I could possibly know about not only how to try a case and run a law firm, but also how to what is the term? How to look at things the way I look at them, which is totally non-sequentially, and totally a grab bag of different concepts, all within the same basic idea, and he's getting there very much so.
Yeah.
And what he does, he's just going to be the greatest trial lawyer in the country. I mean, with his other intellect and organizational skills, yeah, he's just going to kick everybody's ass.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that you were a pilot, because and I'm sorry that I didn't tag the comment, but I thought it was brilliant. It said, Greg Anderson just lands his plane at a different airport.
That's very true. That's very true. I'm not usual. All my friends say that. They're just amazed at this. I've got so many great friends from school and here, and they all just shake their head like, how the hell did that happen? Actually, it's not true. They've been very complimentary, but to them, I'm just Greggy. I'm just their buddy that I go out drinking with and watch Duke basketball with and hang out with. We never ever, I can honestly say, and I've got some friends that we hang out with that are just so incredibly successful, wealthy, and in the media and everything else. And we never talk about any of that stuff. It never comes up. We don't give a shit. We're just out there to basically act like the same idiots we were in college. Our core belief.
Yeah.
Go back to being the idiots we were hanging out in college.
Yeah. So I just saw a message in the chat from Jules that there's a new document that just got uploaded. I don't have it open, so I don't know what it involves, but it's a transcript of Judge Carroll's statement from 10-2.
Who filed that?
I don't know. New doc on top of what was done this morning. Greg, comedy should be your second career. Well, Gregory, I was promised that by Jen that I could have you for 30 minutes today, and we're now going into our third hour. So you've been here more than 2 hours already, and I know that you've got you have committed to being with Rob on Law and Lumber tonight. So I would encourage everybody in the audience, if you want to continue hearing more from my friend Greg Anderson, then join my other friend Rob at Law and Lumber this evening. I think you're starting at 8 o'clock Eastern time, Greg. Is that?
That's the theory. Although I've been trying to tell him I want to go to bed by 9, so maybe he'll move it.
Well, especially now that after I've worn your scrawny butt out. So, yeah,
I think it's at 8, and I'd love to see everybody back and support Rob. And everybody needs to stick with Dr. Joe here and support you, because what you're doing is really important.
Thanks. I will tell you. So, Greg, there is a lot of interest in the other J. Hatch case that you've got with the Ukrainian family, the Ukrainian mom who testified. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name. But can you give us, I mean, within HIPAA compliant rules, can you give us an update on what's happening with that case? Because again, the advocates have a lot of interest in not just making Maya's case a one and done, but actually helping to reform the system that has separated so many parents from their children.
Well, there's this, and then what happened yesterday with Maya's criminal investigation, and how the St. Pete police detective is shutting it down without a single interview of anybody at Johns Hopkins. So that's a big issue that needs to be taken up. The Kushners and Elena testified for us at trial.
Right.
Watched it. And Vadim has become a good friend. They're a great family, Ukrainian family that escaped right before all this stuff came down. And Vadim has made a great life for them here with a trucking company, short haul, less than truckload delivery company. And he's the kind of guy that works on the trucks themselves to get it out there, which is sort of indicative of how you approach things in Eastern Europe when maybe you don't have a whole echelon of middle management. You get down, work on the truck. The big problem here, and I'm happy that people reminded me because I was going to do this tonight. I need to write the people, and everybody needs to write the people in charge of this neurologically impaired. It's NICA.
NICA, yeah.
I'm going to remember
Neurological Impairment Compensation Act.
Compensation, yeah. And so we won about 2 years ago, and we won on the basis of, well, they totally screwed up and there was great liability, and they lost, of course, all the tapes and all the video, and they had nothing to disprove it. But since it's a compensation fund, the idea is that to streamline the whole thing, then there is no fault assigned. And then you just determined if it was a neurologically impaired child. And we had video of poor William we had the MRI studies with, like, the light parts are where your brain's functioning, and then like 1/4 of his brain here is black. And we have videos of the poor kid whose right side is just not functioning very well. And they lost horribly in front of the administrative law judge, who did a fine job and investigated it thoroughly and found every record. So we're like, okay, well, pay these people, right? Nope, filed an appeal. And I said, what are you appealing?
Yeah.
I didn't say, I wanted to say, what are you appealing, asshole? But I did not say that. I said, what are you appealing? Well, we don't think that his injuries are sufficient to meet the standard. What are you talking about? This kid's got part of his brain missing. Have you seen him? Here's the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so frustrating. And that's when I realized, but it hasn't come back to me, and thanks for reminding me, that so many of these things where there's government funding or private funding with no profit motive, if I can say it that way, where lawyers get hired and you've got bureaucrats overseeing them. And the bureaucrats always want to defer to the lawyers because the lawyers are going to be unassailable if the bureaucrats get called on the carpet for stupid decisions.
Yeah.
So you refer it out to your lawyers. The only problem is your lawyers really don't give a shit about whether justice is being done or not. What they give a shit about is keeping the action going so they can continue to bill the thing.
Follow the money.
It's all about follow the money. And so what you end up with are these people, the lawyers out there for these bureaucracies. There's never a check on them. There's never a second opinion check on them. And they always come back with, oh, it's appealable.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an issue. Well, of course, there's always an issue. You're a freaking lawyer. That's what you're supposed to do. What you're supposed to do, however, is exercise some judgment on behalf of not only your own personal interests, but the interests of the client and of society. That's why we're supposed to be a profession instead of just a bunch of whatever we are, monkeys. And in this instance, I'm furious because they have managed to keep this ball alive. And now it's in front of the First District Court of Appeals, and they're backed up because of COVID. Some more brilliance of COVID for those of us in the trenches. You thought COVID was neat. You thought that putting all those restrictions on and all that stuff was cool. Ask the people who are now going on 3 years not getting their case to trial or their appeal done.
Yeah.
Ask them just how neat all the government stuff was that you're bragging about. Ask those folks, and the Kushners are just in that category where what's happened to them is that the case has been in limbo because of the delay and the overload to the district courts based on what happened with COVID. They're just cleaning it up now, so they're just getting into to cases other than COVID are just starting to get reviewed. The First District is a fine appellate court. I know people on that court. They're good judges. They're good lawyers. But they get just massively overworked, and there's a certain brand of lawyer out there that knows that and manipulates the system to put a case into that system where they know it's not going to emerge for 18 months to 24 months.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, William has been growing up without the physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological and behavioral therapy that he needs to get things done. Because the way it works with this NICA program, which is now turning out to be just a disaster, like most government programs, this NICA program has turned into a delay system again.
Yeah.
For those that caused it, to keep the ball in the air while these poor kids are maturing and trying to overcome their disabilities. And the idea was that NICA would provide in short order, relatively efficiently, those services for neurologically impaired babies and children so that they got the therapy early to make them better far down the road. Now we are 4 years post event of what happened with William, which was another Sally Smith.
Yeah.
Screw up.
Yeah.
And so now, I'm a bit at a loss. I'm going to write again. I try to write every 6 months, and you can't write the judges and say, hey, get off your ass and with appellate judges. So, and they're not, and then the point is they're not really sitting on their asses. They just have a ton of cases.
Yeah.
I'm writing to, so that the folks know I'm writing to, and if folks will remind me, or you and I can talk, what needs to happen is I need to find again the chair of NICA and enough people on their board, and I need to write to them and point out these facts, and I need to have like 200 people write as well and say, what's up with this? Why are you letting an attorney with a financial interest dictate your behavior? Here's the effed up thing about it, right? So this was where, and doctors, I know.
Greg, I'm still listening. I have to step off camera to get a charger for my iPad.
I'm sorry. I'm off on
No. Please keep talking. I need you to cover me for 60 seconds so I can go get a charger.
Sorry.
But keep talking about. Trust me, this crowd will write letters.
All right. Well, so what happens is you've got bureaucrats who do not want to take the responsibility for making the decision one way or the other. You've got a fund that is funded by doctors in Florida. And I can't remember if it's only neurologists, neurosurgeons, people like that. But I think a lot of professions within the medical profession fund this, right? So they give money every year to create a fund to help these kids. Now, what do you think happened? Do you think they went out of their way to find new ways to help kids and distribute money? Nope. What they did.
By the way, every physician in Florida is responsible for $250 a year to the NICA fund, except neurosurgeons and OBGYNs who have to pay $5,000 per year.
So they're putting all this money in.
And it almost never pays out. Almost never.
Almost never pays out. It focuses all its attention on proving that they're not sufficiently neurologically impaired to qualify. The only problem is that by that time, going through all the system, it's 5 years post-incident. And so when they determine that it's not sufficiently qualified under NICA, all the bad guys at the hospital who caused a brain damaged kid, the statutes have run. The evidence is gone. They've had plenty of time to monkey with all the evidence. The video goes. In our case, all of the what's it called with the tapes that they do, the fetal heart monitors and what else? This is up your alley.
Like the fetal echoes.
Yeah, the echoes. Isn't there a tape that shows how the kid's heart's doing, the baby's heart's doing?
Oh, fetal heart tracings. Yeah.
Right. All those disappeared.
Yeah.
All of them disappeared.
Yeah.
And so what you end up with is another Tallahassee that seems to be devoted more than anything else to preserving its own privately funded public status to do one thing and one thing only: preserve itself by paying lawyers to tell it not to pay anybody. That's what NICA does more than anything else. It goes out and it hires. You know what? Just coming back to me now, it pisses me off, obviously. They had one doctor to testify against all my board certifieds, right?
Yeah.
And like 5 great docs. It's just total bullshit. Yeah, obviously they dropped the ball. The kids, actually, you look at this O2, they just had it all down. And they hired the same guy, and I think I was the first person to ever ask these questions of him, because it's again not a civil litigation; it's a bureaucratic thing. And I said, "How many times have you testified for NICA?" Well, more than 5. Yeah, I think more than 5. 10? Yeah. Okay. More than 50? Yeah. I think I have. Well, how many freaking times? Can you count them? Take me a little. Well, take a little while. 278 times.
Oh my God.
The same doc had testified for
Oh my God.
You know how many times he found out of that the kid qualified? 30.
Ooh, that's a bigger number than I expected.
Yeah, but that wasn't to say they're actually going to pay.
Yeah, right.
That was just a preliminary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you don't stay on these people, and if you don't stay on people like this, they're just going to sit back and build the shit out of the system and accomplish nothing.
Yeah.
That's why the jury trials are so important, because I'll tell you this, I guarantee you, at some point, somebody in that Johns Hopkins system, when they start writing a check for $225 million, finally, somebody in this organization is going to start asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it's going to be like we just talked about. There'll be a meeting, there'll be a bunch of people sitting around. The facts will be presented. One person will say, "How long has this firm been representing us? 25 years. Yeah. Do we really need them anymore? Or are they, there'll be some comment like that, and then whoop, that's the end of Hillward and Henderson."
I think it'll be interesting when, now that the order on post-trial motions and the accompanying findings have been published today by Judge Carroll. I think it'll be interesting as we move now, in my mind, we now are moving to the appeals process, right? And it'll be interesting to see if the Mr. Steichleather and the other one out of Baltimore kind of take the lead, or if it will still be led by Team Hunter Shapiro.
Howie. It's interesting to see whether Team Howie and Ethan even stay together without beating the crap out of each other, right?
Yeah. Well, and so explain to me and to the audience, because it's come up in multiple chats. It seems like more and more of the motions are filed under the signatures of Hunter and Hughes, and Shapiro is not part of it. Is the audience reading too much into that?
Nope.
Okay.
They were so at each other about 20, 25 days into trial that the court actually said, counsel, do you guys need to take it outside? He actually said, now I can't say it was actually, do you need to take it outside? But it was words to that effect, like, if you guys are going to beat the crap out of each other, why don't you go outside to do it?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Take it outside. That's a Kathy Beatty worthy.
That's a beating. Maybe be out there with Kathy. I mean, they could beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I'd buy tickets to that.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall and know what's going on inside that firm.
I can tell you what happens in firms like that. It's exactly what I was talking about before, which is when you lose a trial. I've been on the receiving end of this. When you lose a trial, a huge high-profile trial, your clients who have just paid you however many millions of dollars get upset. And if you've been with them for a really long time, they get really upset, but they may not let you go, but there's a stain on your record. And you are on double secret probation, and anything can set somebody off, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
So what happened here, I'm fairly convinced, knowing how. Okay, so at big firms, people are at those firms not because they're going to blaze new ground, and they're not there to be the best attorneys in the world. They're there because there's a lot of security in a 500 lawyer firm, because there's so much work coming in and so many lawyers doing it that it's relatively easy to disappear and just do your job, put your time in. But the big thing is the retirement, because everybody retirement, right?
Right.
But the firms are not stupid, and they've learned that absent some incentivification, that the lawyers will sort of check out in their late 50s and through their early 60s, and yeah, they'll bill, but they won't have their heart into it, and they won't go to that extra client meeting, and they won't go develop a new client. They'll just sort of, be passive. And then at the end, at 65, they'll want a big retirement, right? Well, the law firms don't want that. they want you, because those are kind of your peak years, 55 to 65. They want you in there billing. They want you developing work. They want you to do all the things that help make the firm successful, the people coming up underneath you. So they base a lot of your retirement on your last 10 years, and particularly on your last 5 years, right? So if you're at Humongo and Ginormous LLP, and you're 55 to 60 and looking to retire in your early 60s, you're going to do everything you possibly can to create billing and collections from whatever clients you can develop and maintain.
Yeah.
Because whatever those collections are is going to determine by a very specific formula how much your retirement is going to be. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be based off of what you're making while you're there, but it's going to be the actual pay derived from how much money you made for the firm in your last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. And
Yeah.
so if you sit on your ass, your retirement's not going to be that great. If you go out and take a client that you've done pretty well with and all of a sudden turn them into a major profit center, you're going to do great. If you've got a client that you've been milking for decades, but you want to double milk hard, you're going to do even better. So what's the incentive? The incentive is to keep cases going, particularly cases where you can assign 5 to 10 people to just work on that case. Huge firms live for this kind of litigation.
Yeah.
It's the only reason you have law firms this size is because ginormous corporations want to have resources. They're all about resources that can overpower whoever's suing them. Because the dirty little secret is, not with my clients, of course. Actually, I say that because they wouldn't be my clients if they were assholes. They would not be my clients if they were constantly screwing up and doing bad things. So I'm very proud of the people we represent.
Yeah.
But mostly, when corporations get sued in a specific instance, not class actions, not something like that, specific instances, they've usually done something wrong. Absolutely alleged, but they've usually effed up someplace, right? And so the goal is to get rid of the people that are bringing those allegations, so it doesn't turn into something more.
Yeah.
And so that's why they love having gobs of lawyers to throw at cases so that they can overwhelm the plaintiffs and knock them out so that they will settle early and cheap. And that's the way the big firms operate. So you got to get past all that really to do anything like we did. But the idea here, though, is that in retiring, you've got to have the cases where you can throw all those lawyers and paralegals at it, because you get a share a bit out of everything that everybody bills off of your client, right?
Okay.
So if David Hughes is billing, and I think the last time I saw one of his, I think he was billing at like $350 an hour. Howie gets credited with like $50, $75, or $100 of that, literally. And so if you've got that many people working on the case, you've built up in the billing algorithms they use a huge amount of benefit, lack of a better term, argument about how much you should retire at, right? If you cut off that flow of money from those people, well, you got to come up with a new case or a new way to keep all those people busy. And if you don't, then you may not be retiring to Grand Bahama to bonefish all day. You may end up in a retirement community in the middle of the state, not living the life you want. So there are, not that there's anything wrong with that. I have plenty of friends there, but you get the point. You're not living in your own private enclave on Grand Bahama. So there's a lot of incentive to keep cases like this rolling because A, you've got complex, big litigation. B, most important, you got a client that pays. C, you're in control of it. So those kind of cases don't come around that often to most partners. Now, if you're a superstar, David Bowie's, or one of these guys from Washington that's constantly got the Democratic or the Republican Party calling them, they don't really care that much, and the case is a pain in the ass, they'll settle it or they'll get rid of it or ship it out or something. But in one of these firms, when one of these cases shows up, you keep it as long as you possibly can. And so long as you can justify it, you have to understand the system, because everybody wants to have somebody else to blame for the decision making. Typically, most executives, certainly all middle-level bureaucrats, they love outside counsel because outside counsel offering an opinion absolves them of responsibility, right? Because if things go to hell in a handbasket, our attorneys were paying $500 an hour told me to do it.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So it's a fox guarding the hen house. The attorneys are incentivized to render opinions that keep the litigation going, even when there's absolutely positively no way they can win, or that to a high probability they're going to lose. And then once that happens, the bureaucrats become invested in it and they blame everything on, I wouldn't say blame the attorneys, but they do everything because of the attorneys. So the attorneys are incentivized to do things with the bureaucrats to keep the litigation going. Should we sue him? Yeah, let's sue him. Should we bring that motion? Yeah, let's bring that motion. Well, what about this 30-second motion for summary final judgment? I mean, that's going to cost us another $50,000, isn't it? Yeah, but we could really knock out one half of the potential fraud claim they might amend to do. Okay. That kind of shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's getting late.
Yeah.
I got to at some point eat.
I will let you go in 3 minutes. Let me just run through some super chat comments here for you. Hemplant DTX, welcome to the membership. Gothic Brina, congratulations on a full month. Marilyn C, thank you, Greg and Dr. Goodhair. See, Greg, you're in good company. Casey Cat, now they're bringing every juror into question in the Murdaugh trial. Nobody will ever agree to serve again. So, Paul, Juror 1, you just started something new, and now they're adopting it in South Carolina on the Murdaugh case. Charlie Lynn, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. Lynn, thank you for gifting 5 memberships, and please get over your bad shoulder. She just had, Lynn's one of my mods. She just had shoulder surgery, and I talked with her the other day, and I wouldn't want to trade places with her. Gerda, again, thank you for gifting membership, and Koala T, thank you for gifting memberships as well. We asked this question from Ruby about the med mal and why it was focused on Sally. So we've already addressed that. Joy, again, thank you for gifting memberships. Della Sandor wrote an interesting comment that Jay Hatch's lawyers got paid to wear Greg down and make him give up. Big fail. Greg and you, Dr. Joe, give me faith in the good people left in this world. See, Greg, we're leaving a good impression somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you, Della. Casey Cat, as someone who has had RSD and CRPS for 40 plus years, this case meant so much to all of us. The self-elimination thing is real. So is self-medicating. As Greg says, they still don't get it. Dude, if that's not on your bumper sticker, that was genius. And Casey Cat, thank you for your month of membership, as well as Kidada Smith. Thank you for your month. Yay, 1 month. Hi, Mr. Anderson and Dr. Goodhair. Happy to see both of you. See, people like us. People like us.
They really do.
Juror 1 and his wife both said, give us the names and addresses. Letters are en route. I'm telling you, Greg, this is a group that's willing to advocate. And if you need our help with NICA, let's work with the advocates and get it done.
You need it. They need it.
Yeah.
And I'll get some. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to write a letter to the powers that be. Can I copy you and can you publish it?
For sure. For sure.
That'll explain everything. And if people can write in, because this kind of stuff should not happen.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians that got out of there right when things were going to hell in a handbasket. They come over to the United States and this kind of stuff. It's just disgusting. And we as Americans should do something about it.
Well, and I will tell you that, Greg, one of the things that when I watched the Take Care of Maya documentary, I think that one of the most disappointing and compelling moments in the documentary actually was when they shifted to the other families that were being dragged through the same process as the Kowalskis, and how many other families had been separated, parents from children. And I will tell you that there's a lot of support from this crowd to being a part of the solution and making the system even just a little bit better. So you let us know how we can help support you. Trust me, we've got a lot of people in this army of advocates that are willing to write letters, make calls, take a principled stand. So, and we've got folks like Mathis in Germany. Judge C also seems to think J. Hatch doesn't get it. That's apparent today, Mathis. That's for sure. But yeah, we're here to support you, Greg. And listen, go get something to eat. Go rest your voice. I know you're going to knock them dead on Law and Lumber tonight. Thank you for so much time today. I did not expect it. I thought I would have 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes, but you once again exceeded expectations.
You have done so much for the Kowalskis, and I can never repay you. So anytime you need me, I'm here.
Well, thanks. And I'm actually hoping that I get to sit down with Jack and Maya and Kyle soon.
Absolutely.
To bring their story to this audience as well.
Clams, they'd love to hear from you. You should give them a call tonight. They're on Cloud 9.
I will. Thank you. It's been a good day for the Kowalskis and good day for Team Maya. Greg, thank you again for all that you've done. Criminal Med, you're right. Love you both. Come to Wisconsin and save our hospital. No, thank you. We'll wait till summertime for that, Criminal Med.
I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Greg, thank you so much. Jen, thank you so much. Unbelievable to get that much time. Honestly, Jen had told me that I had Greg for 30 minutes today. And then I had the technical issues at the start of the broadcast and couldn't get the sound, I have no idea what the problem was, but thank you for everybody who made the jump over to this new studio. That guy, he loves this crowd. He loves what we're doing, what we're standing for, how we're here to help make a difference. I'm thrilled that he gave us so much time. Not terribly surprised, because that's just the kind of guy he is. But I know that we did not get to an awful lot of the questions for him, but you know, and I appreciate that everybody, that so many of you have used the form and given me a kind of a repository of questions. I tried to get to a lot of the questions, and a lot of the questions were similar, so there was overlap. But you know what? I also think it's important that, you know, Jackie and Grover submitted several questions. JT, I am Smarticus. That's you know, a lot of your. I would like to find a way to recognize those of you who take the time to write questions in, and not just address your question, but address you by name. Again, one of the things that the mods and I are focused on is trying to make this more interactive. And it is hard. Keep in mind, it's much harder to be interactive when I've got a guest, especially somebody as compelling and knowledgeable as Greg. It's hard to pull those questions in because, you know, as the host, I try to actively listen and follow the conversation and take it, you know, in directions that I know you're interested in. But we are. This was day one with the new form, so we're trying it out. Gothic Brina, thank you very much for putting the form together. And I think it's a step in the right direction. You and I will talk with the other mods as well about how do we refine it and make it even better. Apologize, my respiratory crud is still around, but feeling better. Thank you. I was actually hoping to do a short, just one-on-one something today, and then Jules reached out first thing in the morning and said, check your email. The judge has been busy. And she sent me copies of all of the four documents that were released today. And again, you know, I would hope that, you know, perhaps Jules or Candace, if you can post a link to the four documents, I do encourage the audience to download it. There's an order on post-trial motions, 17 pages, where Judge Carroll really just gives J. Hatch the back of the hand. He's not subtle. He's not subtle about his perspective that the J. Hatch arguments just rang empty. As I demonstrated at the top, talking about the pain more intense than childbirth, et cetera, et cetera. He was not impressed with Hunter and Shapiro's arguments, and he was not at all impressed with the arguments that Juror 1 did anything wrong. As I said when Greg was on the show, this order on post-trial motions is such a strong, unequivocal endorsement of the jury process and the work that those 12 jurors, including the alternates, did during the trial. This was not a simple he said, she said, or, you know, here are the facts, here's the counter. This was so complex and so convoluted. And there was a lot of contradictory evidence placed before. What did Hughes call you guys? The 6 people from the bus bench? This was not a bus bench level of understanding information. This jury did a spectacular job, and they were invested from start to finish. The quality of the questions that they asked was spectacular. The order denying defendant Jay Hatch's motion for a new trial based on alleged juror misconduct. Again, a ringing endorsement of Paul and his adherence to the rules, that Paul's inherent integrity probably presented in his mind no alternative. He was going to do the right thing. He was sworn as a law enforcement officer for 13 years. He took an oath to uphold the law. And I don't think that his integrity would have allowed him to do anything that Jay Hatch alleged. And I think that the order denying the motion was one hell of a strong endorsement of Paul as a juror. Order directing mandatory in-person mediation. You know, there's more to this mediation order, and we touched on it a little bit with Greg, but one of the things that the judge does is he gets very, very, very specific about who needs to be in the mediation. And he talks about having, you know, Jack and Maya. Now that Maya is over 18, she can represent herself, right? She's an adult. She was a 13-year-old when this whole case got filed in 2018. But now that excuse me, one sec. I am so sorry about that. But you know, now that she is legally an adult, she and Jack have to be there. Judge Carroll specifies a high-level representative from each insurance carrier. He insists that for defendant Johns Hopkins, either the president and CEO of Jay Hatch or a senior executive of Jay Hatch who directly reports to the president CEO must be present. He cannot compel or require, but he can invite a senior executive of Johns Hopkins Health System Corporation. So that would be, for instance, Kevin Sowers, who we know from the town hall meetings. He says that since they're not in jurisdiction and they're not a party to the case, they can't be compelled or required to be there. But JHHSC's participation would be welcome, but it is voluntary. A high-level representative of each insurance carrier or entity operating like an insurance carrier that may have liability must attend. And he put italics and bold for emphasis. And then he also makes it possible that they can invite others, but he's got a lot of folks that need to be there. And then there's finally a fourth order concerning outstanding sanctions requests, in which he kind of doesn't, he certainly did not order any sanctions, but I do think that he left the door open. Again, I think that Judge Carroll did a very fine job of addressing all of the motions, addressing all of the requests, did not make it personal, and did not do anything to create an issue for appeal. If he comes out and beats up one side or the other, it creates an appeal issue. He was pretty forceful in his language, but didn't make it personal, didn't make it punitive. Yeah, you could argue that he should have taken it the step further, but he didn't. But he left the door open. So I'm actually, listen, the most encouraging thing that I heard Greg say in the 2+ hours that he was talking with us, at one point he suggested or inferred that with what the judge put out today, he was calling for an end to the nonsense that has been thrown out at Jules, has been thrown out at Juror 1, has been thrown out at Hippo Lover, has been thrown out at anybody that they could identify or that Reddit could identify as being problematic or being a square peg in a world full of round holes. So anyway, I would encourage you to, if Jules or Candace can put a link, maybe tack the link at the top of the chat to where the audience can go to download these documents. I encourage everybody to read them. Again, I think that the judge came out very, very strong, but mostly the judge came out very, very strong, endorsing that the system worked, that some very complicated, very complex, very controversial information was presented to 12 people who, were last all seen together at the bus stop. And they got it right. And I got to be honest with you, that doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen. But in this case, Judge Carroll is saying, jury, you nailed it. Way to go. So I would encourage you to read it. Candace, apparently Jules is not able to post the link, but if you could do that for us, that would be amazing. Thank you. And there are going to be some things that we're going to need to talk about. How can we help Greg with the Kushners? How can we shake this case up and get NICA to actually take a step forward so that the rest of the case can continue to work? I have a favor that I will ask you. I'm planning on doing a stream on Friday. Time will be time will be decided probably later today or tomorrow. But when we get back together on Friday, I will preview a request, and that is the Breakfast Company, their newest location on University Avenue in between Sarasota and Bradenton, has been nominated for Best New Restaurant. So I'm gonna be working with my mods to get a link posted so that everybody can vote for the Triple G's family restaurant to get recognized as the best new restaurant. I also hope to have an update for you about making progress in getting Iron 44 published as a digital book, so that you all can download it and read it, and understand that what will probably be posted will be the unabridged 900-page version. Greg is actively working on having it redone as a 300 to 400-page book, but that process will take longer. We're going to apologize. We're going to try to get you that book sooner in the unabridged version, and it will be a big book, but it will also be made available to you at the lowest possible cost. I know Amazon, if we go through Kindle, Amazon will require a cost, but it's not something that that Greg is looking to make money off of. He is simply responding to your requests. And believe me, there were dozens, if not hundreds of you who asked for a copy of the book. And again, he only has about 15 or 20 copies available that are still at his home. There's several other things that I want to talk about on Friday, including, a couple of recent moves with Johns Hopkins and Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, including they just spent $21 million buying land for a new hospital north of town, north of Tampa. But we'll talk about that more on Friday when I have a stronger voice and hopefully less of a cough. I appreciate Miss Jax M is talking about you're starting to suffer, Dr. Joe. Time for you to be resting your voice, and you're absolutely correct, Ms. Jax M. I kind of hit my limit at 3 hours on the last broadcast with Greg last week. I started to turn a corner about 2, maybe 3 days ago. Unfortunately, Triple G and my fabulous daughter both got what I've had, so they're a week or so behind me. But hopefully by Friday, I will be better rested. My voice will be better rested, and we will have improved even more on getting the questions and answers done. I'm actually going to try to get Nick Whitney to join us on Friday. I don't know if he's available, but hopefully he will be. I also can tell you that I have been talking with Juror 1 and his wife, Paul and Yoli. They're fabulous, fabulous people. They've been interviewed on other shows, but I've been talking with them a lot lately. Like I said, Paul and I went to the same high school. We actually have friends in common. One of my friends growing up actually served on the Hialeah PD with him. And so I'm hoping to sit down with the two of them and bring you maybe a different side of that conversation than they have brought to other shows. I also have heard that there may be an opportunity for us to sit down with the Kowalskis sometime soon. I also will be bringing you more of a conversation with Jules. She's been kind of a reluctant star in this show. I don't think that she came to. I don't think that she came to the trial expecting to be a part of it, but she sure as hell found herself in on stage, and so I'd like to have a conversation with Jules. There's several other folks that I'd like to have conversations with, and some invitations that I've thrown out over the last couple of days. Hopefully, I'll be getting some answers back between now and Friday, so that on Friday I can tell you more definitively. On Tuesday we're going to be doing this, and on Friday we're going to be doing that. And I also will be doing some background conversations later this week with a mom who reached out to me and told me the most wonderful story about her 14-year-old daughter, Annie, who advocated for herself when she was talking with a surgeon who was not giving her the answers she needed. And so she took control of the conversation, actually took more ownership of the conversation than her mom expected her to do. And she said that she self-identified as an advocate, and she credited the conversations that we've been having in this channel as one of the ways that she is learning to speak up and advocate for herself. So I'm going to be bringing you that conversation as well. I also have plans to talk with friends of mine who I respect for living life the right way. One of those people is the yacht father, the boat daddy, Steve Heese, my buddy, who I've known Steve for 30 plus years. He had just graduated from Harvard Business School, and I was still doing my residency, and we lived across the river from one another in Philly to Cherry Hill. But Steve is somebody that I not only respect his business acumen, but he also is someone who I respect because he lives his life the right way. Another person who falls into that category is actually a nurse administrator, friend of mine named Fred Nice, who lives in, I think, the Overland Park neighborhood of Kansas City. But again, Fred is an RN, MSN, I don't know how far his nursing degrees go, but he has been an administrator both at the hospital level and at the state level, running state organizations. So I want to talk with Fred about kind of the future of nursing and state-run programs like we've dealt with in this trial. But again, Fred is somebody who lives his life the right way. Volunteer firefighter. He's a single dad. I think we can learn from people like that, and what they have accomplished and what they have focused their life on will I think help shape this group as we work toward making things better, and again leaving our world not as beautiful but more beautiful than it was left for us. So with that, I'm going to dial it back. I'm going to go have some hot tea and honey and try to salvage my voice. Thank you so much for hanging in with me. Again, I was not expecting this much of a conversation with Greg, but hey, if he's willing to talk, I'm willing to listen. I just think the world of that guy, and for what he and Jen have sacrificed, what Nick Whitney and his family have sacrificed, what all of the paralegals, all of the support folks at Anderson Glenn have sacrificed to do their part to take care of Maya is just super admirable. So I feel very blessed to have been a part of this, and I feel incredibly blessed to be developing this community. I mean, just the positivity, the commitment is overwhelming, and it's unique. You don't find this in a lot of communities, and certainly not one of 10,000 strangers. There's almost 11,000 subscribers to this channel, and most of us have never met. You may meet one here, one there, but most of us have never met, and yet we all have this common connection, that we're here for the right reasons. So thank you. And I am going to take a bit of my own advice to heart, but what do I always talk about is take care of yourself so that we can work together to take care of others. Keep your eyes on the community page, and I will have something up by tomorrow afternoon with a plan for Friday. But I'll plan on seeing everybody on Friday. Thank you so much. Again, take care of yourself so that we can take care of others. Bye now.